Hey everybody, I have a video here for you today, and this is not going to be a long one. In the last week I probably had about 5 minutes for YouTube, it seems, but I wanted to make this video today, and this is something I have mentioned in videos a year ago, and also in this video I made about the bases of the pyramids being not stone blocks, they are actually carved steps. I mentioned Khentkawes' tomb in this video and Matt's video over at Ancient Architects. And Khentkawes' tomb is something that I mentioned in a couple videos during my Egypt Pyramid series. And then later in time, I kind of mentioned what I thought this place actually was based on my reading of the text. And this has just evolved over time. Now here is an old pic of Giza. Here is Khentkawes' tomb, what they call it. And that is just a 4th dynasty woman who had her tomb put on top of an original structure in Giza here. Now, one thing I've talked about is the alignment of what we call the Sphinx today to the spring equinox sunrise. And basically what these structures are sun temples. The sun shining on different faces of the pyramids really marks the changing of the seasons actually. And everything is based on the movement of the sun. And then it's woven into the stories on earth in the religious text of this original culture who built these, later becoming the dynastic Egyptians. But Horus, the sun, the movement of the heavens, Orion, these people were astronomers, and they watched the celestial bodies move across the sky. This here is the chair panel of Thutmose IV, and he will be the subject of my next video, and I will try to cement an ancient mystery. But here, this glyph right here, this means the son of Ra, and this is how all pharaohs are depicted. The son of the sun, if you want to take it that way. That's what the duck and the sun glyph means, the son of Ra. But I'm going to be mentioning hieroglyphs in a Q&A video down the line, and I have already recorded a few segments down at the Luxor where I point to actual glyphs on the hotel, and I act like I'm actually in Egypt. And I watched a few of those clips, and some of them I really didn't know what I was talking about, so I'm going to have to record some of those again. But this is a difficult thing, hieroglyphs. There are over 1,000 variations, and this is something I've been looking at for 2 years, and I'm just slowly wrapping my head around it. I will be talking about hieroglyphs that are down in Abydos that people think are ancient technology. One of those glyphs is this one right here. People say, and this has been transposed over another glyph, and people say, well, it's an ancient submarine. This is actually a hand. That's a thumb. These are the 4 fingers coming down, and that's for the sound of the letter D, duh. But the son of Ra, the duck and the sun, that is important because it's associated to all kings of Egypt and probably extended back into the pre-dynastic period. And we are down in what they call the Valley Temple of Khafre on Google Earth here. And let's just call this what it is. This is the Temple of Osiris at ancient Ra style. But here you see some of the stonework that really the only other place is the Osirian that looks like this in ancient Egypt. We call that a Temple of Osiris, no problem. But I was listening to John Anthony West and remember some other things I've read, but it seems there was a roof here in pre-dynastic ancient times that we have really lost track of and that Egyptologists don't recognize. There was a roof on here. There were ceremonies held to the sun. What is this line, you ask? Well, let me show you. Now here is what we call the Sphinx today, ancient Anubis according to the ancient Egyptians. Here is the Valley Temple of Khafre, what it is called today. I will call it the Temple of Osiris, because I think that's what it was originally. What is this line? Well, I put a line right through the top of what we call Khentkawes' tomb, one of the original structures in Giza. This is it right here. Khentkawes' tomb, a little farther up on the Giza plateau, but an original structure and then a 4th dynasty tomb built on top of it. What is this building all about? Well, I think this was a building that the death ritual took place in, embalming, mummification, a ceremony involving Anubis. In the ancient texts, it says the priests actually wore Anubis masks. Now there's whole chapters, I believe, in the book of Coming Forth by Day that go over the ritual that took place in prehistory in this chamber, and we really don't know what it is. We call it a 4th Dynasty tomb. The original structure had a purpose. When the death ritual was finished, the dead king was taken down here. He was put on a boat. Here's Khentkawes' tomb. Here's the causeway. Here is the covered up harbor. But I think there was an ancient harbor in here. And that's what one of my next videos is going to be on also. The king was taken out on a symbolic journey on the Nile for a symbolic journey on the boat ride that is seen on all tombs. He comes back in to the harbor at Giza. He has to pass Anubis, as it says and shows in all the ancient text and artwork, and he comes up the receiving path. That's what the causeways are called. Now, there are pre-dynastic kings out here that the scholars have not even identified, that we have found fragments of their tombs. So I think this was the ritual that took place. And Khentkawes' tomb down here, this is where the death ritual took place. Now what about this line? Well, let's take this out to the horizon and back up here. Now here we are centered on top of the Valley Temple of Khafre, what I think was the Temple of Osiris in ancient times. And we are looking in the distance right over Khentkawes' tomb. Now we have it set on December 21st, the winter solstice. Let's just see what happens. And the sun sets in the distance. If you were on top of the Valley Temple of Khafre, what is the Temple of Osiris? Right over Khentkawes' tomb, the sun sets in perfect alignment. But down by the Sphinx, on what we call the Khafre Valley Temple, what I think was the ancient Temple of Osiris, on December 21st, over Khentkawes' tomb, the sun sets on the winter solstice, the death of the sun. When the dead king would get off his symbolic boat ride, the Nile, Earth's representation of the Milky Way, he would have to pass ancient Anubis, the only god to be allowed to be represented at the entrance to tombs. But then the dead king's spirit would go up into the necropolis to his tomb, and his soul would become a star in the constellation of Orion after the symbolic boat ride. So from the Valley Temple, which I think is the Osiris Temple, an alignment that goes right over Khentkawes' tomb aligns with the setting sun on December 21st, the day that marks the death of the sun. The pharaohs are the son of Ra, or the son of the sun. One thing I want to mention, the Red Pyramid has a causeway that goes off to the west, and that alignment looks familiar to me, and that might solve a mystery with the Red Pyramid's causeway and why it goes to the west. But this is something I have mentioned before, Khentkawes' tomb being the mummification chamber where the death ritual took place. It was all about Anubis, the original god of Giza. Something I've mentioned before, but I didn't want to make a video specifically on this until I had some good information to share. I think I did. Hope you thought this was interesting, and you all have a very nice day.